Hi, my name is Mikheall V Patel, and today I'm going to be talking about the concept of perfect competition using a real-life example in Malaysia, which is nasi lemak vendors that operate in markets such as morning markets and roadside stalls. Now, this market is very familiar to us, and it provides a good example of how perfect competition actually works in practice. But why exactly does nasi lemak vendors fit the characteristics of a perfect competition? Well, there are actually several reasons. First, there are many buyers and sellers in the market. No single vendor can control prices because customers have many alternatives. For example, if one seller sells nasi lemak at RM3 while another sells it at 250, customers will easily switch to a cheaper option. Second, the product is also largely homogeneous, meaning that most nasi lemak dishes are very similar with the standard coconut rice, sambal, anchovies, cucumber, peanuts, and egg, making products from different stalls very close substitutes. Third, sellers are price takers, meaning they must accept the market price rather than set their own. For example, if most sellers sell at RM250, charging it at RM4 will likely lose their customers. In addition, there's also free entry for new sellers to enter the market with relatively low startup cost, and exiting is also fairly simple if profits are too low. And finally, consumers have near perfect information because they can easily compare prices and quality between stalls through either observation or even word of mouth before purchasing. So, if all sellers are price takers in this competitive market, what would happen if one vendor decides to increase the price above the market level? Firstly, customers will switch to the competitors. Since there are many stalls selling similar nasi lemak, consumers can easily buy from other vendors, charging the market price. For example, if most stalls sell at RM3 and one vendor increases their price to RM4, their customers will immediately switch to a cheaper alternative. Second, the quantity demanded falls sharply. The demand for an individual firm is perfectly elastic, meaning that it's perfectly horizontal as displayed. Meaning consumers are very sensitive to price changes. Even a small increase above the market price can cause demand for that vendor to drop significantly and even potentially to zero. As a result, total revenue and profit decrease. Even though the price is higher, the large fall in quantity sold means that the total revenue, which is calculated as price times quantity, will fall. This ultimately reduces profit and may even lead to losses. Eventually, the vendor will be forced to return to the market price in order to stay competitive and attract their customers again. In perfect competition, firms cannot influence price and must operate where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Therefore, a price increase above the market level causes loss of customers, lower revenue, and reduced profit, showing that firms in perfect competition are truly price takers. So, since nasi lemak vendors in perfect competition must accept this market price, the next step is to understand how this affects their equilibrium in the short run compared to the long run using some cost curves. Now, in the short run, there are three possible outcomes, firstly being supernormal profit, which occurs when the market price is higher than the ATC or average total cost. And this can be depicted with the following graph, with a scenario. So, let's say a nasi lemak vendor at a busy morning market may experience unusually high demand. So now, if the selling price for that nasi lemak is RM4 per packet, while the average cost of producing a packet is only RM3, the vendor then earns an RM1 profit per packet. And this can be depicted with the blue shaded area. And this therefore shows that the vendor earns more than normal profit. Other entrepreneurs will then notice this opportunity, and new vendors will then be enticed to enter the market. Another possibility may be subnormal profits, and this occurs where the market price falls below the average total cost. And this can be depicted in the following graph, with the red shaded area showing the loss. So, for example, a nasi lemak vendor may face lower demand due to bad weather, fewer customers, or rising ingredient costs. The selling price will then remain at RM3, but the average cost then rises to RM350. Therefore, the vendor incurs an economic loss, which can be seen in the red shaded area. This means that the vendor may continue operating in the short run if their revenue still covers their variable cost. However, if their losses persist, the vendor will then have to leave the market in the long run. Besides earning supernormal profit or even subnormal profit, a nasi lemak vendor may also earn normal profit, which exists in the short run, and this occurs when the market price is exactly equal to the average total cost. So, let us now take a look at the graph and the condition in which this may happen. For example, a nasi lemak vendor earns enough revenue to cover all their production costs, including the owner's opportunity cost, but they earn no extra economic profit, and this can be seen in the following graph. Therefore, the vendor remains in business, however, there's no new incentive for firms to enter, nor is there an incentive for existing firms to leave. This brings us to the long-run outcomes of a perfect competition firm. Unlike the short run, where firms may earn profits or subnormal profits, normal profit is the only sustainable outcome in the long run. Supernormal profits attract new nasi lemak vendors, increasing the supply and lowering the prices, while the subnormal profits cause firms to exit. Now, These adjustments continue until firms only earn a normal profit, where the price equals the average total cost, and there's no incentive for entry or exit of the market. Now, having examined how cost curves determine the firm's short-run and long-run equilibrium under perfect competition, we can now shift our focus from the firm's perspective to the market's perspective by analyzing consumer surplus and producer surplus. Let us now take a look at the consumer surplus, which is the financial benefit you get when you pay less for a product than the maximum amount you are actually willing to pay for it. Consumer surplus varies depending on how much individual customers value a vendor's nasi lemak. For example, if the market price is RM5. If vendor A that has a better taste, friendlier service, or a more convenient location, customers would then be willing to pay more, for example RM7, therefore providing them with a higher consumer surplus of RM2 because they are willing to pay more than the market price of RM5 despite only having to pay the RM5. However, if vendor B offers only average quality, customers may only be willing to pay up to $5.50, therefore generating a lower consumer surplus of only 50 cents, because a customer's willingness to pay is closer to the market price. Moving on, let us take a look at producer surplus, which is the extra financial benefit producers receive when they sell a product at a market price that is higher than the minimum price they would have been willing to accept. Now, producer surpluses differ mainly because vendors have different production costs. For example, once again, the market price for a nasi lemak is RM5. If vendor A with lower costs such as better suppliers, more efficient operations, or even family labor, they're able to sell their packet at RM3, thus enjoying a higher producer surplus of RM2, compared to, let's say, vendor B that has higher cost, where they have to sell it at RM450, thus earning a lower producer surplus of only 50 cents, even though they charge the same market price of RM5.
Hello everyone, my name is Chaw and my student ID is 252UG242NX. Today I will be talking about McDonald's, which is one of my favorite fast food chains. But you might be wondering, how is McDonald's any different from KFC or even Malaysian homegrown brands like Mary Brown's? Well, let's start off by discussing monopolistic competition to get a grip on how product differentiation helps firms navigate through a tight market. Monopolistic competition is a market structure where companies sell products that are similar but are not exactly a perfect substitute. This is because each product is differentiated by brandings, features, location, and brand reputation. A good example of this is between McDonald's and KFC. Both of the companies sell similar fast food items such as burgers and fried chicken, targeting the same group of customers, but their products are widely differentiated through taste, branding, and menu variety. Now, in order for McDonald's to compete in the Malaysian market, McDonald's have adapted menu items accustomed to the Malaysian taste. This includes releasing Malaysian-inspired food items such as Nasi Lemak McD, McDonald's spiced chicken porridge, and a hot range of beverages like teh tarik and hot Milo. Menu adaptation as a product differentiation strategy can be seen throughout other brands as well, like for KFC for example, they have released similar food varieties to compete directly with McDonald's. This includes Nasi Lemak KFC, Zinger porridge, and various flavors of mochi like tiramisu and choco. Besides that, to meet the largest population group in Malaysia, both companies are halal certified to ensure they meet the needs of Muslim customers and as a way to build trust within consumers that they care about different religion customs. Now, with this in mind, customers in Malaysia are able to indulge in the brand with a sense of familiarity. Moving further on, McDonald's has introduced an affordable menu called the McSavers. It allows budget-conscious consumers to mix and match a wide variety of drinks and main courses starting at just RM5.99 and all the way up to RM6.99. This affordable night of menu is also available daily to ensure budget customers can easily dine at McDonald's without breaking the bank. It also reaches a wider group of customers where they might consider eating at such places as a luxury. Beyond that, McDonald's has released several limited edition runs during festive holiday seasons, such as the Prosperity Burgers during Chinese New Year and promotional deals during Hari Raya Aidilfitri. McDonald's is also one of the most appealing brands to children, where an order comes with a mini surprise of toys. With every purchase of the Happy Meals, the order comes with a limited toy, and they can even collaborate with other major brands such as BTS and Pokemon to attract a wide array of customers. Now, for the next part, let's do a comparison of short-run profits and long-run equilibrium. Whoa, where have I suddenly teleported? Anyways, let's talk about short-run profits versus long-run equilibrium or excess capacity using cost and revenue curves. During short-run profits are maximized where marginal revenue (MR) is equal to marginal cost (MC). Because firms behave like a monopoly during the short-run period through product differentiation, it has a downward sloping demand curve, which is represented by this graph. As you can see on the graph, it is earning an economic profit unlike in the long run, where firms earn zero economic profit, which I will get to later. To actually make a profit in the short run, the price is set higher than the average total cost (TVC), which is in the blue region in the curve. Moving on to the long run, since there is zero barriers to entry for monopolistic competition, the market often experiences excess capacity, as when the others sees a firm is making a economic profit, they will likely enter the market with similar competing products, such as with the case of Dasa Fried Chicken, a Malaysian homegrown fast food brand competing directly with KFC. This causes excess capacity, and the firms in the same industry will lose some market shares to the new competitors. The demand and revenue curves will shift to the left as shown by this graph, which means it is slightly more elastic as there are now more substitutes. The firm's demand curve is also downward sloping, and when price meets average total cost (LRATC), the firm here is making a zero economic profit. Now, let's talk about how advertising and brand loyalty influence consumer choices in the market. With that out of the way, let's talk about how advertising and brand loyalty influences consumer choices in the market. McDonald's spends heavily on advertising as it plays a key role in influencing consumer choices and decision making. Most McDonald's advertising materials uses bold and bright colors such as red and yellow, which can be seen throughout their packagings and stores. The golden McDonald's M arches are hard to miss, together in blend with the red background. It is also their signature colors to captivate viewers' attentions and triggers customers' craving. Not only that, McDonald's often releases limited time items like the McRib and seasonal McFlurries to create a sense of urgency and the fear of missing out to drive purchases. Beyond just advertising, McDonald's has a loyal fan base to the brand through a loyalty program integrated in their mobile applications. With each and every purchase through the mobile application or scanning your member QR codes for the in-store purchases, you are rewarded with points. With the points accumulated, it allows customers to exchange for food items, which builds up customer loyalty over time. As a result, customers are encouraged to spend more to maximize their benefits, strengthening brand loyalty and increasing customers' long-term retention. Lastly, monopolistic competition leads to less efficient outcomes than perfect competition, because monopolistic competition firms have a certain market power due to product differentiation. Perfect competition firms are price takers as they sell identical products with perfect substitutes. However, firms in monopolistic competitions can influence prices by creating unique products and brand identities that could be associated with higher quality products. With that, monopolistic competition firms charges higher prices that are higher than marginal costs, leading to inefficiency. Therefore, the price is higher than marginal cost, P more than MC. In addition, in order to make their products and brands stand out, firms will invest significantly on advertising, branding, and product differentiation to attract and retain customers. These factors will certainly increase customer choice and satisfaction, but they will also raise business costs. Meanwhile, perfect competition firms focus on producing goods at the lowest cost possible. Therefore, monopolistic competition is always considered less efficient than perfect competition because it results in higher prices, excess capacity, and additional costs associated with product differentiation and advertising. All in all, McDonald's adaptation to local menu items and the introduction of the McSerious menu contributes to McDonald's fast and steady growth in the Malaysian market. And limited runs during festive seasons and the surprise of the Happy Meals toys keep the relevancy alive and keep you coming back for more in anticipation of the next. That is all from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm gonna pass the next part to my groupmates. Thank you.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about Tenaga Nasional Berhad or TnB and why it can be considered as a monopoly in Malaysia's electricity sector. Since electricity is something we use every day, this topic is actually very important because it affects almost everyone in this country. Almost every home, business, school and hospital depends on it every day. Since consumers cannot easily go without electricity, they do not have many alternatives. In normal markets, customers can switch from one seller to another, but in the electricity sector, switching is much harder because the service is connected to a fixed network. This is one reason why TnB has such a strong position in the market. Let's look at why TnB fits the characteristic of a monopoly. A monopoly is a market structure where one big company controls the supply of a product or service, and in this case, TnB is the main electricity provider in Malaysia. It has huge infrastructure like power plants, transmission lines and distribution networks, which are very expensive to build. That means it will be extremely hard for a new company to enter the market easily and compete with TnB. Also, electricity is a basic necessity, so consumers cannot simply choose to switch to another supplier. This diagram shows a natural monopoly. It means one company can serve the whole market at a lower cost than many smaller companies. For TnB, this explains why electricity distribution is more efficient when handled by one large provider rather than duplicate networks. Another reason TnB is seen as a monopoly is because the market is heavily regulated by the government. In Malaysia, electricity pricing is not completely free for TnB to decide. The government steps in to make sure prices stay fair and consumers are protected. This is important because if a monopoly has too much freedom, it could charge very high prices and reduce consumer welfare. So the government regulation is like a balance between protecting the public and allowing TnB to cover its costs. Now let's talk about economies of scale. This is one of the biggest reasons TnB remains so strong in the market. Economies of scale mean that when a company produces or serves more customers, its average cost becomes lower. For TnB, the electricity network is expensive to build, but once it is in place, serving more users becomes more efficient. This is because to enter the barrier, any new competitor would need massive investment just to build a similar system. So in simple words, TnB's size makes it cheaper and harder for others to enter the market. This graph shows the long-run average cost curve. At first, as output increases, average cost falls, which means the firm is gaining economies of scale. For TnB, this explains why a large national electricity network is more efficient than many small competing networks. Next is price discrimination, and TnB is a clear example of this two-block tariff. For domestic users, the electricity rate is lower for the first block of usage and higher for bigger usage level. This means households that use less electricity pay less per unit, while heavier users pay for more. In a way, this helps for lower income or smaller households because their electricity bills stay more affordable. But for larger households or users with higher consumption, the cost becomes higher. So different consumer groups are affected differently by the same tariff system. So TnB is not just a big company, it is a real-life example of how monopoly works in an essential industry. It shows how one dominant firm can control a market, but also how government regulation is needed to protect consumers from unfair pricing. If we look at the overall picture, TnB matches the monopoly model because it has strong market control, very high barriers to entry, government-regulated pricing, and a system that charges different groups differently. That is why economists often use TnB as a good real-life example of a monopoly in Malaysia.
Hello to everyone. My name is Siti Zuleikha Muhammad Zamri, and let's pack my bag with me to go on a trip. Me and my family, we are apparently going on a vacation, and that place requires a flight, so I need to book a ticket. But when I check out the airline's ticket in Malaysia, I found something interesting, and I'm going to explain to you guys about it. Just like I said earlier that I need to book a flight to go there, right? And I'm in Malaysia, so we in Malaysia are commonly known for only two major companies that controls airplanes in Malaysia, which is Malaysia Airlines, and AirAsia. And let me explain to you guys. This is one of the major market structure that we learn in economics. I'm about to pack my things, so I need to sit down because penat. Okay, so I am going to explain to you guys about oligopoly. So first of all, I bet most of you guys haven't learned or haven't read enough about oligopoly, right? Let me make this video to make sure that you understand enough so that you don't have to refer to the textbook or any slides that your lecturer has been given. So what does oligopoly really mean? Oligopoly is a type of market structure that when it comes to large company in Malaysia dominate the industry. So we can use these two companies, like I said earlier, to make as the perfect example, to make it easier to you guys, because these two are such a massive company that most of the Malaysian use it. Not even Malaysian. Now let's think for a second. Have you ever wondered why Malaysia doesn't popping up airline brands every year, like the cafes or any shoes brand or any clothing brand like we always see every day? Have you ever wondered? Well, that's because entering an airline industry in Malaysia is extremely expensive. Like they need lots of things to complete to enter those industry in Malaysia. License, they need aircraft, they need airport facilities, and they need a huge amount of capital. And this is what we call as high barriers to entry, which is the key characteristics of an oligopoly. And the next characteristic of oligopoly is they are interdependent. So what does it mean? It means that these two dudes, Malaysia Airlines and AirAsia, both of them, they need to pay attention to both of their actions, like their each other actions. Huh? How? Okay, simple example. Imagine AirAsia just launched such a cheap tickets to go anywhere you like. Do you think that Malaysia Airlines can just ignore it? Absolutely not. No, never. Wrong number. I refuse. The decisions are closely connected because they both have the same passenger, which is us, Malaysian citizens. Like, if they both maintain their ticket prices, both of them have benefits because they just keep their healthy profits. But what happens if AirAsia cuts its price? Many Malaysia customers or any passenger will move to AirAsia, right? And the Malaysia Airlines will lose their profit and will lose their customers, their market shares, sorry. However, if both of them decided to cut price at the same time, a price war will happen. I mean, sure, the passengers like us will be happy because the ticket price is getting cheaper, but they might lose their profits. Like, the market share might be high, but their profit will go down to the earth. This is why most of the companies in oligopoly structure needs to think carefully before making price decisions. Now, let's look at the role of the government. The government helps ensure fair competition through regulations and industry oversight, and it also sets safety standards and operational requirements that all airlines must follow. These types of policies can help to create safe yet competitive environment for both passengers and airline companies. Finally, Let's imagine that AirAsia has announced that they will reduce their ticket to 20% off. Would Malaysia Airlines would immediately slash all of its price too? Nope, not necessarily. Instead, they will focus on their strength by offering special promotion, improving customer service, strengthening their loyalty programs, and also highlighting the additional benefits that come with a full-service airline experience. These allow Malaysia Airlines to remain competitive instead of getting trapped on a price war. Finally, I'm done packing, so let's go to the conclusion. In conclusion, Malaysia Airlines is such a great example for oligopoly because they have high barriers to entry, they have strategic interdependence, they have strong government regulations, and last but not least, they have few dominant firms. So, thank you so much for watching and see you guys later. I hope this explains to you a lot. Bye.